We are almost at the halfway point of conference play, and I just got to say, the season has been all that we could have hoped for. Every week there's a new storyline. It's crazy, and let's just get into it. Patrick, I know since the preseason, no doubts here. You have been a Jacksonville men's basketball supporter. And not to say that there's anybody in the office that doesn't support the team, but you have been very vocal. I need it to be known on record that you were the guy that's just in the office letting everybody know that Jacksonville is.
I am.
Yeah,
I've been
number
riding
one.
with Jacksonville. Yeah, I had him. I was one of three. I got to correct myself. I think a couple weeks ago I set it up as the only one as one of three media members to vote for Jacksonville first in the preseason poll, and my faith has been paid off. So.
I mean,
Jacksonville.
Here they are. Again, we're almost at the midway point. 8 games in, 18-game conference schedule, and Jacksonville is sitting at the top of the men's standings, 7-1, and they're the one, mind you, was the first game of conference play against the team that's probably going to be in the mix to do things. The preseason number 1 pick team, Lipscomb, came in a Swisher. Lipscomb did what they needed to do on that first weekend of conference play. Since then, since losing that game to the Bisons, the Dolphins have just done one simple thing. That's win. 7 in a row. 7-1. They're in a great position to have the tournament go through historic Swisher Gymnasium. And, the way that they play in that building, that's an enviable spot to be in for Jacksonville. I think that's, looking back at last week, that's where we've got to start the conversation, is talking about Jacksonville getting things done. And, they go on the road.
Yep.
They win at West Georgia, 17-point victory then. They beat Queens, who, honestly, a week and a half ago, we're looking at Queens at, 5-0 and saying that Queens was at the time, clearly they're having a great year. That was a team that had not lost, was on an amazing run. They did drop that game to FGCU, and we were kind of wondering what is Queens going to be? Where do they shake out? Where do things go? So Jacksonville got wins, and looking at that West Georgia team, who I have been saying that I feel is probably a team that's better than their record would show. I mean, they beat West Georgia by 17, and West Georgia turned around and beat North Florida on Saturday, 92-72. Those were good wins, and they do them on the road. Robert McCray going out averaging what he did on the road with points and assists, rebounds. He's kind of out there doing it all. I think that clearly Jacksonville is a team that's got it going. They're rolling 7 in a row. There's no other way to describe that but saying a team's got it going. Can they maintain, though? A lot of basketball left to be played. A lot of teams that are pushing to the top, and another one that's pushing to the top that Jacksonville did. They do have a win against North Alabama.
Yep.
Got to obviously point out what UNA is doing right now. I think that the game against Austin Peay, the UNA Austin Peay games are always great. Going back to last year, Austin Peay beat them, I would say, when it mattered the most, which was the postseason game. But their games were close, and this game on Sunday didn't fail to live up to the expectations, up to the hype, if you would, of a UNA Austin Peay men's basketball game. And that was Saturday's game. Going into overtime, UNA gets it done 88-84. But before that, UNA had Lipscomb come in, and North Alabama got the win against Lipscomb. So as we talked about before, it seems at the top are kind of getting each other. Like it's definitely, when you look towards the top of the standings right now, the teams are kind of starting to get at each other a little bit more. You got teams with a few more wins, but losses. And when you're looking at those losses, they're coming to teams right there at the top. So far, there are a lot of teams that are winning games that they should win. And then these competitive games are kind of going either way. I think that, overall with what's going on on the men's side, obviously you can't discount where Lipscomb is. They're still in the mix. FGCU. I know FGCU did lose that game to EKU, and that kind of slowed them down. But I think those two teams, EKU and FGCU, are still there in the mix. I mean, FGCU that FGCU's game with Jacksonville coming up, I'm looking forward to that one. I think there's a lot of size, a lot of physicality that could occur in that game. So I'm definitely looking forward to FGCU Jacksonville. And on the women's side, speaking of FGCU, they're continuing to do what they do as they've done. That's just, enough said with FGCU. I think that looking forward to the game between FGCU and Lipscomb coming up. Lipscomb, a team that's they did lose the matchup to Central Arkansas because speaking in women's basketball, I think UCA is starting to remind us what they plan to be and where they can be, and that rematch could be coming down the road. I think there was a time I know you mentioned a couple weeks ago to me, Patrick, as I was talking about the power rankings and teams, and you mentioned UCA. Now, granted, this was mid to late December when we had that episode of the podcast, and you asked about it, and the answer was because they just hadn't played for a while. There was a gap where they just didn't play, and we kind of missed them in things just because they weren't on the floor competing. Now, teams are out there every week and they're putting it together. And UCA 7-1 on the women's side, 6 in a row. That game is coming. Ready to see the rematch of our women's final. So you got Lipscomb. You got Austin P on the women's side. Bellarmine's still there. Jacksonville 3 in a row, and now they're sitting at 500
with a healthy Eden battle.
Score that is like player of the year candidate hands down to me
for sure. Definitely first team. See if she could.
I'm going player of the year. I'm being bold with it. I think she just changes so much for that team. Again, earlier in conference play, struggling a little bit. She was not on the floor. She's back on the floor, and you're seeing that team that got those wins in non-conference when we were like, hold on, Jacksonville women's basketball team is pretty good. She has that impact, and you got Sanaya Craig, Priscilla Williams, that what Special Jennings is doing with that team. They're kind of finding their stride, and they're winning games that they should win, being a problem at home. That's what you need to do, and get those games in your building in the tournament. Then you may have to go on the road. You eventually have to go on the road, especially if you're not the 1 seed. We know you'll have to eventually go on the road unless there's an upset somewhere. But to get keep that momentum going, get a first round quarterfinal game on your own court. Handle business. Keep it rolling. So I'm looking at that, and I think UCA would be the team that I would say if I had to pick on the women's side is who's the one that's going to challenge FGCU, because right now I don't feel that FGCU is not going to be in the discussion. I think it's just like as it's been in the past, kind of who is the team that's going to challenge them this year. Hadn't seen them matched up with Lipscomb yet. And I think that I just look at that Lipscomb team and the way they shoot threes and the way I'm looking at that team and the way they're playing, I think they are built to compete with FGCU. I don't think that's the focus. You're not building a team to beat FGCU, but the team that's been built can compete and shoot through three and score with FGCU. I mean, that Central Arkansas Lipscomb game the recent one. I know the first one was a little lopsided going UCA's way, but the most recent UCA Lipscomb matchup, that was a very competitive game that just came down to, that's a one possession going the other way, and that result's different. And now we're talking about UCA and Lipscomb having split results instead of UCA sweeping the season series against Lipscomb, which could come into play when we're talking tiebreakers and things down the stretch. And again, whether or not Lipscomb has to go to Conway, if that matchup plays out, or if they're getting people to come into Allen Arena.
All it takes is one game. Like we speak very highly of FGCU, and they well deserve.
But yeah,
how we speak, but they could lose a game. It could happen.
It is happening,
and it has happened.
And it has happened. They've lost the game. My thing that I've always said is, it's just me. You would get a game from them. You will get one from them. When is it going to happen? Does it happen in the regular season? And then they have that slip up and they run the table after that, or do you catch them in the quarters or a semifinal round, or maybe even the final? Like, can you get? When do you get that one game? I mean, but I think that the teams they are running away with things now, like record wise, and I say that when they're 8-0 and there's a team that's 7-1, there's teams that's 6-2. So I don't know if running away is even too strong of a word. Like, there are teams right on their heels. Again, like you said, one game, somebody gets a game from them, and now this thing is tied. It looks completely different. So I think there's, again, same way we were talking about with Jacksonville. We're only 8 games, and there's a lot of basketball left to be played. But you're starting to look at tendencies. You're starting to look at trends, and you can see which teams are positioning themselves. And I think that's the most exciting thing about what we've got right now at this point in the season, finishing up the month of January, moving into February, that we're starting to see those teams. It's getting closer. I mean, we thought non-conference and early conference, but now it's like we're starting to see it. Oh, this team is that. They've got something over there, ready for those matchups that we haven't seen yet that we know we've got coming on the docket. So it's very exciting, very exciting. And to jump into our weekly awards, just to talk about that on the men's side, it was a sweep. North Alabama, Jakari Lane, Daniel Ortiz swept the weekly awards after their games with Lipscomb and Austin Peay. I'm pretty sure both of them scored 40 points across the week. Not in the games, but just across both games. They both drove that Lions offense, and we already know Jakari Lane, what he's been doing this year. He's just a force when he's on the floor. And Daniel Ortiz, from years ago when he was in the conference with UNA previously, he's been a scorer and he's a game changer. And we knew with Ortiz coming back into the fold in Florence, what they've got on that team. This was just a week when they are on, and you can see what they are when they've got it clicking. Again, they're getting it done when they have to. Those home games, they're winning those. That's a key to success. On the women's side, Bella Vinson, just mentioned Lipscomb. She's our women's basketball player of the week. Cameron Thomas from Stetson, she is our newcomer of the week. Stetson is a team that's kind of like Jacksonville. They're 4-4, 500. They're just halfway there, but they have those times when Lynn Brea's teams are going to battle and they're going to fight and they're going to be a problem. You're not just going to see Stetson on your schedule and think, oh, no, that's a tough one. And Cameron Thomas, our newcomer of the week. And then a familiar name as our ASUN freshman of the week, Samaya Wyatt. She's almost penciled in just about every week. She's obviously putting up numbers as a freshman for Austin Peay. So congratulations to her for once again being named our ASUN freshman of the week. Those are our weekly awards. That's what happened last week across the conference. So when we come back from break, you already know we're looking ahead. But first, before we look ahead, got to give out some power rankings. So we'll be right back. Keep the fun going. Here, Joanna Reitz, head coach of West Georgia women's basketball. We're going to do a little something different today. I got 5 words, word association.
Okay.
But I need you to give me an ASUN basketball team to associate with this word. When I say the word, give me the first team pops in your mind.
Okay, I'll do my best, but we're new in the league. We hadn't played everybody yet, so.
Then you can just throw anything out and it'd be
Okay.
like, oh, we hadn't even played them, so there wasn't no no negativity in it. I'm just thinking about something
Okay.
big.
Big?
Yeah.
First team pops in my head there is that we've played so far would be JU.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, they're bigger than us.
Okay,
But
okay.
we're used to, about every team we play right now is bigger than us. So,
Fair enough. Next word is fast.
fast, West Georgia.
Hey, that's fair. I said any ASUN team.
That's right.
'Cause, I mean, the next word was going to be red. I thought I might get it then, but we'll see where you go with red.
Is Austin Peay red?
They are.
Okay, Austin Peay.
Don't act like you're just scouting. No, we need that energy. Okay, all right. The fourth word, money.
Florida Gulf Coast.
That's great. Okay, here's an easy one. Saturday.
North Florida.
There we go. I thought I was gonna be a layup to end things, but I gave it to you. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Okay, all right. Let's
I
something
appreciate
fun
that.
here. Appreciate the time. Glad you could come join us on the podcast, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thanks, William.
let's go. Let's just jump right into it. The ASUN basketball power rankings. And I think I'm going to start with the women. I know I'm going to start with the women. Number 6, I've got Austin Peay. 1 in 1 week. Going with the Govs at 6. At 5, I've got Bellarmine. They're a team that's kind of in the middle of things now. Another one of those 4-4 teams right now. But I still think they are one of the better teams overall. I still put them in that top half of the conference as far as our women's basketball teams. And I just think Bellarmine's still going to make a push. Number 4 is Jacksonville. 3 wins in a row. Talked about this a little bit earlier. Eden Battle is back. They're finding their rhythm. I think they're playing well right now. I think they're playing well. I think that come from behind win on the road a couple weeks ago at Austin Peay might have sparked Jacksonville and might have got something going with them, and they're playing like it. 3, I have Lipscomb. I have Lipscomb at 3 because I have UCA at 2. I think they're very comparable teams, but Central Arkansas has won 6 in a row, has beat Lipscomb twice, including this week. And I think UCA is just right now putting together a little bit better team. And number 1 goes without saying at 8-0. How can any team right now? I don't see how any team could be placed higher than the team that has not lost. So FGCU women's basketball is number 1 in the power rankings this week.
I like those choices. I think you nailed it right in the head.
All right. Well, I got the sign of approval. Let's see if you agree with this next grouping, because now going to the men. Number 6, despite the struggles, I've got Queens. I still think, similar to how I spoke about Bellarmine, I think Queens has proven until the wheels just fall off, which I don't think they will, based on the talent, based on the coaching, based on what we've seen this year. I think they'll be fine. I've got Queens at 6. Number 4 and number 5 were tough. And they are only ranked in this order. It's a recency thing. What have you done for me lately? 5 is FGCU and 4 is EKU. And I'll admit that's only because of the results of the game they just played. That's kind of where I'm at with those two teams. I don't see a huge difference in them other than they've played, and I've seen. Yeah. I'm
surprised you have FGCU there even after the Stetson loss this week. Maybe Stetson deserved to be in that top 6 potentially.
Stetson is close, and I would say if I could give a 6 A and B, and I could be persuaded that Stetson should have been in the rankings because a three loss in a row Queens team probably should fall out of the power rankings and be replaced by a Stetson team that's won 3 in a row. That's fair. I think it's a bit of me maybe, hey, don't want to discredit a win and say a win is not a win. Where Queens was and where they kind of have fallen to, dropping to 5-3, Stetson playing up to 5-3.
Yeah,
I could hear the argument in that. So that's fair.
Just saying. Just want to throw them out, give some credit.
Yeah. No, they get credit. They're getting it done. They're right there in the mix. I think that may surprise some, considering when you're looking at that's the reigning champion, but that team is very different from last year's team. But they still got Donnie Jones coaching that team, and I think he's a great coach, and he's got Stetson winning right now, and that's all that matters. You're getting the guys on the floor, and we've got teams that have gone through the season and had different lineups. I mean, Stetson is another one that's had a lot of different starting lineups on the floor throughout conference play. I mean, you got guys coming in that are trying to figure it out and learn to play together. It takes a while, and we probably are, we are starting to see what this team really can be, and they're getting it done at the right time. Like, this is the time to figure it out and get it going. And be 5-3 in the conference standings with 10 more games to go. So, I mean, I would say that the future could be bright down there in DeLand for the men's basketball team moving forward. I don't see
Starting to figure it out.
Yeah, they're starting to figure it out. 3, I have Lipscomb, and that is a direct result of the number 2 team being North Alabama and them beating them. That's just it's kind of how it works out at this point in time in the power rankings. There's no more of that guessing about this win, this. No, these teams are going up head to head. It's making it easy on me, so to speak. So I'm very confident in going North Alabama 2, Lipscomb 3. And again, similar to FGCU women, right now a team that's won 7 games in a row, Jacksonville, I don't see any reason why they would not be at the top of the power rankings. And since I don't see a reason why they would not be, they are number 1 in the men's basketball power rankings this week, Jacksonville Dolphins. Outside of the Stetson suggestion, but Patrick, how are you feeling about the men's? Would you have been? How disappointed would you have been if Jacksonville wasn't number 1 this week?
I would have been so upset. They deserve it. I think they've earned it. I want to make this point. I think it's important to, if you look at how Jacksonville has played, they've been able to adapt on the road. When they had to go to EKU, I believe they scored 87 in that game in a win. 87-77, I want to say was that result in that game. And they did it again this week against Queens. They got sped up in both of those games, and they were able to survive and still played good defense, kept their teammate or their opponent under 80. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. They've shown, I mentioned it last week, it's like, can you adapt and play to the different styles of play that are within the ASUN so that when you're not just at home and you're playing the way you want to play, that you could go into someone else's arena and play the way they want to play and still beat them. And Jacksonville showed that this week.
I think that's very interesting. That's a very good point.
Over the last 2 weeks, they've shown that they could play their game and beat you, and they could play your game and beat you, in my opinion. Because they did that to UNA. They played their game against UNA.
Well, yeah, they play a completely different game almost at home versus on the road. I mean, you look at the home games, just, they've got the 68-44 against Austin Peay, 64-60 with UNA. But then to your point, 87-77 playing Queens on the road, 82-75. So they're winning the grinded out games where we're playing in the 50s and the 60s or whatnot. And then,
this is where they want to be.
Yeah, but then they're able to go out there and, push high 70s, 80s and still win. And, I kind of lean back when I mentioned before about them scoring, but then I go back to that Mercer game that was, 89-90. Was a loss in overtime, but they can score. And I think that's probably traits of a pretty good team, that you can do both. That they don't get uncomfortable so far. Nobody has been able to rattle Jacksonville and get them out of the game. If you want to get and play their type of game, of course, like you said, that's their style. They're good for it. And if it speeds up, so far they've been able to speed up with the teams they're playing, and it's how you end up 7-1 at the top of the power ranking. So shout out to the Dolphins.
They deserve a ton of credit in that game, and I felt like too, like,
what's your game?
They've been able to, or the Queens game, sorry. Thank you for making me clarify. Jacksonville deserves a lot of credit for that Queens game. Like, McCray was excellent. We expect him to be the number 1 guy, but, like, they're able to just get production from a lot of people. A guy that I really like seeing on the floor is Kendall Munson. Whenever he's on the floor, he just seems like a guy who kind of bullies people down low a little bit, is physical, the way they want to play, and could be, sub in for Payne, who is a great scorer. You got a guy you want on the floor, but has only averaged like 24-ish minutes or 22 minutes, I want to say, this year. So you could go to Munson from the bench and have him fill in that role as well. They just seem like a very complete team, Jacksonville. I'm surprised by how complete they are.
I think they credit to the Coach Jordan Mincy. I think he's laid a foundation, and they're kind of still – I know this is not a thing. I'm about to say something that I know is not true, but maybe there's some truth in it. they're riding the wave of the push that they got when they got into the postseason last year. To some aspect, I feel like that there was kind of an expectation on Jacksonville. They kind of struggled a little bit last year. Then when it mattered most, they figured it out. They got on that run as a 10 seed, run all the way to the semifinals. Outside of an amazing shot, I think that was Stephen Swenson for Stetson that made that shot. I don't think it was Blackman. I think it was Swenson. Don't quote me on that.
It was Swenson, yeah.
Outside of that shot, Jacksonville's going to the final last year as a 10 seed. I say that I get it. You transition, new players coming in and everything, but I feel like this team at 7-1, and you look back at how they ended conference games last year, mind you, they kind of played their way into the postseason. I mean, before Bryce Workman got back last season, they were kind of looking like they were out of things, and Jacksonville wasn't looking great. And then he came back. That was a complete different team. They found their groove. They got in, and then, as you said, it's just one game, and they took it one game at a time and almost took that to the championship. So
it's too bad that Mincy couldn't find just a little bit more eligibility for Workman, because he is the missing piece of this team. There would have been a no doubt consensus #1 team if Workman was on this team this year, but they're making it happen. I mean, if you were to go back to that game, to your point, and say who were the best 3 players on Jacksonville towards the end, you'd probably say Payne was the 3rd best, Workman was the 2nd, and McCray was the 1st.
Yeah.
And you bring back 2 of those guys, and they're great. And like I mentioned earlier, Payne only plays 22 minutes a game. He has a huge impact in those 22 minutes, but then you could go to the bench and still feel good about where you're at.
Definitely. Speaking of Jacksonville, I think the game of the week this week is FGCU at Jacksonville.
Rumble.
I'm not going with the Rumble. The Rumble is there.
No? Okay.
I'm not going with the Rumble.
Okay.
I'm not going with the Rumble because
you got to throw the record books out.
It's not even
in the Rumble, you know. I don't know.
It's
I
not
think
even
it happened.
It's not even about not wanting to see that game. I am more interested in seeing FGCU in Jacksonville right now today. It's not so much about the Rumble. I think it's going to be a bad game, or I think one team's going to just run through the other. It's nothing about that. When I look at the games, it's like, oh, this FGCU team that stumbled against EKU has kind of come out of nowhere, so to speak, and is right there at the top of the standings. Looking at the non-conference schedule the season that they had, the record they had, I mean, FGCU, they just kind of showed up. They're winning the games, but I want to see if they can keep it going. And Jacksonville, I'm also wanting to see, can they keep this going? And I would, if I'm looking around the conference, I think just those are 2 of the most physical teams we've got out there. And I'm just a fan of what that game could look like.
Totally.
I just don't know. We haven't seen the run and gun high scoring game inside Swisher. And I don't think either one of those teams want that kind of game. And I think that just makes it exciting. Now, the Rumble, UNF Jacksonville, the Rumble is coming. We know. We're locked in on that. We understand the greatness. I'm also with you. You throw everything you thought you knew, what everybody's doing. If Jacksonville does beat FGCU or whatnot, and they're rolling 8 wins in a row, and UNF, whatever, I get that. But I think the one game I'm keyed in on overall this week is FGCU at Jacksonville. I think that's going to show me a lot about, and I just want to see that game. I also, North Alabama at Queens. I want to know. I'm interested to see where Queens goes. We talked last time after the loss to FGCU. What would Queens do? They did drop 2 more following that, and now they're 3-game losing streak. Got North Alabama coming in, a team that is hot. I will just say they got a lot of momentum they built with their 2 games on their home floor, but they got to go on the road. And that's the challenge of taking that energy that they have in that building in Florence and taking that on the road. That is a challenge. I mean, I talked to head coach Tony Pujol when they were on their 4-game road stretch down here in the state of Florida and how challenging it is to go on that road trip. So they got to go in the Queens building, and I want to see how Queens bounces back, so to speak, and if they can snap it and get back to that team, like I said a week and a half ago, that was looking like, are they unbeatable? And then EKU at Lipscomb is another men's game that I'm checking on. EKU is a reigning regular season champion. They've got the pieces. George Kimball, the scoring that he has, Devontae Blandon, the just all around exciting player that he is. He impacts the game in so many different ways. Wanting to see what they can do on the road at Lipscomb, which is, I think, we talk about, potential player of the years. J.O. is in the mix. I mean, the way he's playing down low this year, they're just dropping the ball to him. And I mean, he looked like a quick, you blink and he's got 30 points against Austin Peay not too long ago. And it's just, I think he's in the mix, obviously, from his scoring and his impact with Lipscomb. So I'm hooked in on the EKU at Lipscomb game. I mean, you got a Lipscomb team. Lipscomb is 6-2 right now, with their only 2 losses to Central Arkansas. So outside of games with a team that's 7-1, Lipscomb has handled its business. Now I know I talked about the test FGCU had coming in with EKU and Bellarmine. They handled it. Clearly they did. They still have not lost. They got Lipscomb and Austin Peay next. And again, I probably say this every week about tough tests, and it could get cliche and boring, but there are certain games that kind of stand out. And this week on the women's side, that's one that is standing out. And I think that's going to be the game of the week going into it, Lipscomb at FGCU. Jacksonville at EKU, I think, is also interesting. EKU women, team 3-5, they found themselves kind of slipping to the lower end of the standings right now. Again, we get it that it's early. And Jacksonville, a team that is on the other end of this thing, three wins in a row. Eden Battle, we've discussed several times on this show. I want to see Jacksonville taking it on the road. Can they get it done again in a road game and EKU stop the bleeding, so to speak? It's 2 losses. Again, 3-5. It's early. They in this thing 13-5, and nobody's talking about the 3-5. But Jacksonville on the road at EKU is another game. And then finally, West Georgia at North Alabama is another game I'm looking at. And that is because these are teams that I think 4-4 North Alabama, 2-6 West Georgia. There's a lot of basketball to be played, but these two are 2 teams that probably are not where they would like to be, clearly. And I think it's also time, knowing that there's a lot of basketball to be played, there's also, you don't want to run out of time. You don't want to turn it on too late. And I think both of these teams are at positions now at this point in the season where kind of got to get it going. West Georgia did win their last game. North Alabama is on a 2-game losing streak. I just think this will be pretty interesting. UNA's 3-1 at home in conference play so far. So West Georgia having to go into that building where they're 1-3 on the road in conference play. It's interesting. Adds a little element to this matchup of UNA being, can they continue their solid performances at home? Can West Georgia kind of push some teams on the road? So kind of I want to see where West Georgia lands on the women's side. I've mentioned several times about the men in both these teams. Obviously, the look at them is that they're transitioning teams. First year is in ASUN. Just kind of want to see where things shake out for them. I've been saying that the men are better than their record, and I think the same about the women. I think that watching them play, they play really hard. So just got this game circled to lock in on and to see what happens. Again, a lot of basketball left to be played, and that's very exciting. But it is the last week of January, and we got some other things cooking with the Atlantic Sun Conference. I mean, this week we've got preseason women's lacrosse. We've got preseason men's lacrosse awards. We've got preseason softball awards. We've got a preseason showcase coming for softball, baseball awards, a baseball showcase on ESPN Plus, beach volleyball. Like, I know we're basketball, and we've been waiting on this, and we're in the thick of it, but Patrick, the spring sports getting started just gets me motivated for what's to come. I mean, we know we're gearing up for our basketball championship, but then we've got a bunch more to do. We're just heating up. We're just heating up right now. So I'm locked in, ready for more conference play this week in basketball. And, of course, the start of our spring seasons. Got some lacrosse coming up this weekend. Tennis is going. Track's going. Golf is back happening. It's starting to feel like spring around here in the ASUN. So appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you next week on another episode of the ASUN Game Day podcast.